Wow. You thought your life hasn't turned out as you had imagined. Peter, huh? One moment, a fisherman, and the next, definitely something different. Something similar is being hinted at with Isaiah. First, there's a being with God. This is depicted vividly with Isaiah, or an angel taking an ember, a hot ember, from the altar and touching the mouth of Isaiah, purifying him. But then also Peter. Yeah, I'm a fisherman. You're not. I'll humor you. I'll go back out, even though I've been there all night long. And then he falls at the feet of Jesus. Depart from me, for I am a sinful man. I mean, that comes out at different times in the gospel as well, like when John the Baptist's disciples approach Jesus and say, hey, where do you live? And he says, come, and you will see. Or like when Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they say, well, some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, others other prophets. But then he said, and you who live with me, are with me, who do you say that I am? Well, you are the Christ. Being with him is transformative. It changes a person. First, there's being with God. Then there's mission. With Isaiah, here I am. Send me. And with Peter, he left everything. Everything. Work, livelihood, family, and followed Jesus. First, there's being with. Then there's mission. Now, for the Christian, this being with begins formally in baptism. When we're associated with Jesus, we're inserted into his body. We're baptized into him, so his calling becomes our calling. His mission becomes our mission. His identity becomes our identity. We're called Christians, right? The word Christ is derived from the root word meaning to anoint. He's the anointed one. We are his anointed ones. We're not just his followers. We're his anointed ones. As Jesus was anointed priest, prophet, and king, so then are everyone, or is everyone, who's baptized into him anointed priest, prophet, and king. It's central to our identity. So developing those gifts or offices is the central task to fulfilling our vocation. Now, John Paul II said that the lay vocation, that is your vocation, consists in living out those three different offices of priest, prophet, and king. That's how you fulfill your vocation. Now, the one that we're probably most familiar with would be that of the priestly mission or office. If you're of a certain age, likely your mom or your grandma would say, offer it up to you. Oftentimes when you didn't want to do something that you had to do, well, offer it up. The priests offer things, offer sacrifices. So John Paul II said that you lay people exercise your priestly office when you offer yourself and all of your activities to the Father according to the mind of the Spirit of Christ. All of your activities, work and school, yes, leisure time, recreation, sporting endeavors, shopping, and all the hardships that come our way. When you offer them here, he said, along with the body of Christ, what happens? Well, the world becomes consecrated to God. I mean, it's not altogether different than the many offerings that you make for your spouse or your children. That has a way of changing the family, uniting them, blessing them, identifying the highest good and integrating that into your life together. There's the priestly mission or office. The prophetic. John Paul II said that the lay faithful are given the ability and responsibility to accept the gospel in faith and to proclaim it in word and deed without hesitating to courageously identify and denounce evil. They are also called to allow the newness and the power of the gospel to shine out every day in their family and social life, as well as to express patiently and courageously in the contradictions of the present age their hope of the future glory, even through the framework of their secular life. This reminds me of one of our parishioners who works at Garmin. He told me, it's been months ago, he said, I think it was during Advent, one of his co-workers offered, I think it was a Bible study at Garmin over lunchtime. So he said, there's like 10 to 20 guys who would come together over lunch and study the Bible at Garmin. That's an explicitly prophetic act, right? John Paul II is saying that part of your vocation is to speak a gospel word in those circumstances that call for it. A word that sheds light on a particular circumstance or relationship. Or it could be a word of silence, but a word of prophetic action, stepping away from a situation of gossip or whatnot. Now, of course, to be a good prophet, which is a teacher, means you need to be a good student. To be a good director, you need to take direction. So it has to do also with learning the gospel word in order to speak it effectively. Then finally, the kingly role. You're anointed a king. What does a king do? Well, he's to govern his people, provide for his people. John Paul II is so good about this. So good. He said, you exercise your kingship as Christians above all in the spiritual combat in which you seek to overcome in yourself the kingdom of sin, and then to make a gift of yourself so as to serve in justice and in charity Jesus, who is himself present in all his brothers and sisters, above all and the very least. If you're to govern well, if you're to provide well for people, your heart first has to be in a good place. You and I first have to be able to overcome and place in proper order the different passions in our heart. Otherwise, we won't end up giving those to whom we're entrusted what is their due, what is best. And he says, in particular, as kings, you're meant to recover something of the original value of creation. That is, as you govern your life and your work and your leisure, you're meant to aim it, bend it back to the highest good, away from which it has been bent by the devil, man by sin, and by our participation in that. But where does it begin? Boy, it begins at home. If you're going to be a king, well, you've got to be king of your own heart. You've got to govern that well. Priest, prophet, and king. It's the way that you, as John Paul II understands it, will fulfill your vocation as a lay person, a lay baptized person. So the question becomes then, how do we fulfill it? Which I'm glad you asked, because one way in which we seek to do that every year is to set goals for the coming year. And it seems to me, as the parish of John Paul II, it makes complete sense to take the framework that he spoke of for the lay vocation and use that as the way in which we can conceptualize how we are either achieving or falling short of the vocation to which we're called and to which we'll be accountable one day. Now, setting these goals, well, it does have the practical benefit of identifying who is active in the parish, so that when another parish says, hey, this person wants to be a sponsor or a godparent, but we need to know whether or not they're active, we can say, well, yeah, they at least filled out this form and set some goals, so we think there's some activity going on in their heart. We think so. But also it's helpful for us as we ramp up to open up our academy to understand which families are active in our parish and then can worthily receive the financial support that the parish would gladly provide. So there are practical benefits to it as well, but it's especially to help develop our own vocation. So if you would, I'd ask you to take these little pamphlets that are at the end of your pews that look like this and pass them down. They're on both ends of the pews. So I'll have you open to the inside pages. On the left side, you'll see broken out those three different offices: priest, prophet, and king. And underneath each of those words are some potential goals for you to set. They're starting points. So it's just to get you to begin to think about it. And then each person we would ask who's of age in the parish then could select goals under each of those three different areas. It's hard to achieve something that you don't identify and that you don't aim at. So, priest, if you're not praying a morning offering, offering the day to God, well, that's an easy way. So you roll out of bed, you hit your knees, and you look ahead at the day and say, okay, Lord, I want to be around this person. They test me often. Please help me to be patient. And on you go. Or at the end of the day, you look back, you hit your knees before you go to bed, and you examine your conscience. Or let's say, especially if you're retired, why not make it a point to come to one daily mass a week and exercise that priestly office of yours in a special way? Maybe you have the capacity and the heart to assist us at Mass, as being an usher or a sacristan or reading. Well, if you'll turn to the other page on the right side, you'll see a list of all these different opportunities in the parish that you could volunteer for. Opportunities here at Mass and elsewhere. Or let's say that you're not contributing regularly to the offertory. Here's a challenge. If you're not giving regularly to the offertory, you need to be giving regularly to the offertory. If you're being blessed by lights and heat and insurance and etc., then we'd say, well, we don't want to take advantage of others, so all of us need to be contributing regularly to the offertory. If you're not doing that, we'll just start at a manageable level and work from there. Under the prophet, I would say, well, think about ways in which you can develop your understanding of the gospel. There are great resources online. I've listed Word on Fire or the Hollow app. You could join some of our JP2 groups. Maybe you're not taking a very active role in the development of your children's understanding of the gospel, and so maybe you could say, you know what, I have been omitting that, or I've been having my spouse, typically it's the wife, show up for these things and do these things. I think this year I'm going to commit to it. And then on the kingly side, well, that's one where we're going to try to work on our own hearts, get things in line there, and then find ways to serve people out there. So, abstain from things. That's a time-tested way of chastening or disciplining our hearts. Maybe it's by limiting our exposure to things from YouTube or other streaming services that have a way of capturing our attention, our time, and maybe our spirits. But then also there are positive ways, like, okay, there are opportunities in here to serve the poor, like with St. Mary's Food Kitchen. So I ask you, please take some time and look through these. Look on the other side. Renew your commitments, if you would, to the parish, both in terms of your moral investment and your material investment of tithing. I give through automatic withdrawal. I find that easiest since I don't like to write checks so much anymore. Maybe I'm the only one like that, but that works well for me. Now, what I'd love for you to do is be able to complete these during Mass, but I mean, it really does take a little bit of time to think through and pray through them, so I'm fine if you'd want to take them home. But we are going to begin to fasten the screws, if you will, on this just a little bit in terms of how we identify people as being active, and certainly when it comes to our providing financial assistance, both for our CGS programs and certainly for our academy. We'll identify families in that way. Friends, this is ultimately about following Christ. Place it in those terms and see it through the prism of that which John Paul II has left us. Thank you.